Hello, everyone. Hi, and welcome to a new session. So it's Thursday again, and I'm back with a new session of current updates. So if you're new to our channel, please do subscribe and hit the bell icon for all notifications from our channel, right? And here with me is Ananya. Okay, so let me start by sharing the screen. So I welcome you all again to this new session of current updates. And today we will be dealing with some famous writers of nonsense literature. You all know that nonsense literature is quite a popular genre of literature where we read works where things don't really make sense, where logic doesn't really work, where all the characters and the settings and everything feels very absurd, right? So let's look at this genre today, and we will be talking about some major writers who have written and have become very popular by writing works of this genre. So, yes. Ananya, will you read?
Yes, sure. So, Edward Lear, he's an English artist, illustrator, musician, author, and poet who is known mostly for his literary nonsense in poetry and prose, and especially his limericks, a form that he popularized. His principal area of work as an artist were threefold. As a draughtsman employed to make illustrations of birds and animals, making colored drawings during his journeys, which he reworked later, sometimes as plates for his travel books, and as a minor illustrator of Alfred Lord Tennyson's poems. As an author, he is known principally for his popular nonsense collections of poems, songs, short stories, botanical drawings, recipes, and alphabets. He also composed and published 12 musical settings of Tennyson's poetry.
Yes. The slide continues.
In 1846, Lear published a book of nonsense, a volume of limericks which went through three editions and helped popularize the form and the genre of literary nonsense. In 1871, he published nonsense songs, stories, botany, and alphabets, which included the nonsense song The Owl and the Pussycat, which he wrote for the children of his patron, Edward Stanley, 13th Earl of Derby. Many other works have followed. Lear's nonsense books were quite popular during his lifetime, but a rumor developed that Edward Lear was merely a pseudonym, and the book's true author was the man to whom Lear had dedicated the works, his patron, the Earl of Derby. Promoters of this rumor offered as evidence that both men were named Edward and that Lear is an anagram of Earl. Lear's nonsense works are distinguished by a facility of verbal invention and a poet's delight in the sounds of words, both real and imaginary. A stuffed rhinoceros becomes a diaphanous door scraper. A blue boss was plunges into a perpendicular, spicular, orbicular, quadrangular, circular depth of soft mud. His heroes are conglewongles, poggles, pobbles, and jumblies. One of his most famous verbal inventions, the phrase runcible spoon, occurs in the closing lines of The Owl and the Pussycat and is now found in many English dictionaries.
So, uh, it was a very good idea, I think, to start the session today with one of the most famous writers of nonsense verse, that is Edward Lear. Whenever we do any course or anything on nonsense literature, the first writer who is always talked about is Edward Lear. He has written many limericks, many nonsensical verses, even the illustrations which are there in his works in his nonsense verses are very popular. Even the verbal phrases that he has invented, the neologisms, the new words that were coined by him are very popular. So please do look up this writer Edward Lear and his contribution in nonsense literature. Right. Have you all liked the session? Please like the session because in this time net also you guys saw that questions came from children's rhymes as well, right? So maybe this time you can expect questions from nonsense literature as well. So please look up these writers more, like this session, please, and share this with your friends as well. Okay, let's move on to the next writer. Yes.
Lewis Carroll. Now, Lewis Carroll is best known for Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, which was published in 1865, and Through the Looking Glass, which was published in 1871, is often celebrated as a master of nonsense literature. His works exemplify this genre, which is characterized by whimsical absurdity, wordplay, paradoxes, and a playful rejection of conventional logic. Despite its surface frivolity, Carroll's nonsense writing operates at multiple levels, appealing to both children and adults through its blend of fantasy and intellectual engagement. Carroll, whose real name was Charles Lutwidge Dodson, was a mathematician, and this background is evident in his deliberate subversion of logical structures. His works often present puzzles, paradoxes, and linguistic tricks that unsettle rational expectations. For example, the mockery of conventional language rules is evident in the Mad Hatter's Tea Party, or the nonsensical conversation with Humpty Dumpty in Through the Looking Glass, where words and meanings are constantly in flux.
So, before we move on to the next slide, one thing you guys should notice that also the years in which these very important works were published, because as you have seen that NTA is obsessed with chronology, right? So please be very careful about in which years these works were published. Like when Alice's Adventures in Wonderland or Through the Looking Glass, these works are very important for the contribution they have made, not only to nonsense literature, but all towards English literature as a whole. These works are very important, right? So please be very careful about the years in which they were published, right? And here we are focusing mostly on the nonsensical genre. So how these works have flourished over the years as major works, which talk about how this nonsensical genre works to the subversion of syntax, conventional language rules, everything. So please look up these writers more, even the years in which these works were published. So let's continue with Lewis Carroll a bit more because he's very important. Yes.
Carroll's use of puns, invented words like Jabberwocky, and absurd dialogues creates a world where meaning is often deliberately destabilized. This play with language allows him to critique the rigidity of Victorian education and language structures while entertaining readers with clever, imaginative prose. Alice's Adventures in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass challenge established hierarchies and norms. Authority figures such as the Queen of Hearts or the King and Queen in Looking Glass are portrayed as capricious and ridiculous. These portrayals suggest Carroll's skepticism towards institutional power, whether in education, politics, or social conventions. Although seemingly nonsensical, Carroll's work often grapples with deep philosophical questions. Alice's journey through Wonderland involves constant questioning of identity, reality, and the nature of existence. In Alice, logical reasoning becomes absurd, pushing the boundaries of how we understand the world.
So that was quite a good look at the contribution of Lewis Carroll towards the genre of nonsensical literature. And when we talk about nonsensical literature, it doesn't really mean that it's just nonsense. It's just gibberish. No. Often this works through the mode of satire. They attack very relevant ideas or institutions or people, right? So they often attack power. or the misuse of power. They often question or they present us with very unsettling questions like, what do we mean by existence? What does our existence even imply, right? What is even logic? Why are humans so obsessed with meaning making? With every single sentence, we humans try to produce some meaning. So, what is this obsession about meaning with the humans? So, nonsensical literature, in a mode of satire or through satire, questions all these habits and attitudes of mankind as well. Okay, let's move on to our next writer. Okay, so before we proceed, we're from on October 10, we are closing our net admissions for December course, for December net, that is. So before we close our admission, now you can use our code DASERA and you can get a discount of rupees 2000 on our net price, net course fees. So hurry if you are preparing for December net, and do get enrolled in our online course for December 2024 and give your net preparation a great boost. Okay, right, let's move on to our next writer. Yes.
Dr. Seuss. So, American children's author and cartoonist, he is known for his work writing and illustrating more than 60 books under the pen name Dr. Seuss. His work includes many of the most popular children's books of all time, selling over 600 million copies and being translated into more than 20 languages by the time of his death. He published his first children's book, and to think that I saw it on Mulberry Street, in 1937. During World War II, he took a brief hiatus from children's literature to illustrate political cartoons, and he worked in the animation and film department of the United States Army. Dr. Seuss stands as a key figure in the tradition of nonsense literature, blending imaginative absurdity with meaningful storytelling. His playful use of language, fantastical characters, and nonsensical worlds have made his works timeless. In true nonsense fashion, Seuss's stories reject the constraints of logic and realism, inviting readers into spaces where creativity and joy reign while simultaneously offering subtle social critiques.
Right. So, have you all liked the session? Please like this session and share this with your friends. And now we will be focusing on a very, very important writer of nonsense literature, that is Shukumar Ray. Okay. So, please look up these writers more. So, as you know, that today we're talking about famous writers of nonsense literature. It's a very important genre, right? And such genres are getting more and more important for the exams these days. So it's a very important session also. So please like this session and share this with your friends. Okay, yes.
So Sukumar Ray, he's a Bengali writer and poet from British India. He is remembered mainly for his writings for children. Sukumar Ray delved into a unique genre of pure nonsense and gibberish, a pioneering work in Bengali literature with a few exceptions, work that was compared to Lewis Carroll's Alice in Wonderland. Amazing sense of humor, sharp power of observation, and unfathomed wit merged with a profound command on selection of words, produced a class of humor which was equally approachable by children as well as the grown-ups. Now, Abol Tabol is a collection of Bengali children's poems and rhymes composed by Sukumar Ray, which is first published on 19 September 1923 by Ure and Sons Publishers. It consists of 46 titled and 7 untitled short rhymes, which quatrains, all considered to be in the genre of nonsense literature. Bengali readers were exposed to a new nonsense fantasy world by the poems in Abul Tabul. This selection offers the best of Sukumare's world of pun-riddled poetry. Although it was not understood at the time of its publication, many poems in Abul Tabul contain skillfully hidden satire on the state of society and administration of early 20th century colonial India, mostly Bengal. embedding implied hidden meanings of a subversive nature in nonsense rhymes for children was Ray's clever way of subverting press censorship by the then British administration in India, which was paranoid about seditious and subversive literature.
So, yes, we all are more or less aware about the influence Shukumar Ray has exerted over this particular genre. And his nonsensical writing is very popular not only in Bengal but all over India. The translations of his poetry collections like Abol Tabol, Hojo Borolo, even his works like Pagla Dashu, they have been widely translated into English, right? And you know the main crux of his writings is that he was not only just trying to give fun, or he was not only trying to poke humor. His writings were also a means of attacking the contemporary superstitions, the contemporary ill practices which were prevalent in the society. When he was writing, it was the time of the British Raj in India, right? The India was not yet independent back then, so they had to be very careful about what they were writing and what they were sending for print, because the print culture back then was under the grip of the British Raj. So they had to be very careful about the message they were trying to convey to the readers, right? And the carefulness which he uh, adopted to convey his messages about the torture the British was inflicting back then. He did it in a very subtle way through his satirical works, through his nonsensical verses. Because if we look at the poems in Abol Tabol, they mostly condemn the lazy British officials, the British officials who were adopting malpractices, who were torturing innocent people, and the rich bourgeoisie who were not really very bothered about the oppression which was meted out on the poor people, right? So through his nonsensical verses, he was not only poking humor, he was not only trying to have fun or give fun to kids, but those were very powerful verses when it came to the condemnation of the contemporary British Raj as well. Okay, that's why he also had to be very careful about the press censorship. So Shukumar Roy is a stalwart when it comes to the genre of nonsensical literature. Do look up his works like Abol Tabol, Pagla Dashu, Hojo Borolo. Very, very interesting works. And the translations are also available very widely these days. So if you don't know Bengali, that's not going to be a problem. You can also look up the English translations. But yes, that that rasa which is there in his Bengali writing, that's impeccable, right? Okay. Next writer of nonsensical literature. And guys, please do like the session. Please share this with your friends. We really do work hard a lot to bring all these writers together to think about these sessions. So please help us and like the sessions and share this with your friends. Yes.
So, Anushka Ravi Shankar. She is often called India's Dr. Swiss. Now, Anushka Ravi Shankar is a contemporary writer of children's literature who has made a significant contribution to the nonsense genre. Her works include whimsical tales filled with playful rhymes, absurd situations, and imaginative plots. Some of her notable works include Tiger on a Tree, a delightfully nonsensical story about a tiger caught in a predicament written in a rhyme with a playful sense of absurdity. Excuse me, is this India? This is a story that mixes elements of travel and absurdity, where a traveler's journey through India is filled with strange and surreal encounters. Moin and the Monster, a humorous story where a boy encounters a bizarre, nonsensical monster, blending the fantastical with everyday life.
So again, a very important writer of nonsensical literature, Anushka Ravishankar, very important Indian writer of nonsensical verses. Okay, Please do look up these writers. Okay. Here is our last writer for today. So yes, Ananya.
So Mervyn Peake. Now this is English writer, artist, poet, and illustrator, and he's best known for what are usually referred to as the Gormenghast books. The four works were part of what Peake conceived as a lengthy cycle, the completion of which was prevented by his death. They are sometimes compared to the work of his older contemporary, J.R.R. Tolkien, but Peake's surreal fiction was influenced by his early love for Charles Dickens and Robert Louis Stevenson, rather than Tolkien's studies of mythology and philology. Peake also wrote poetry and literary nonsense in verse form, short stories for adults and children, which were letters from a lost uncle 1948, stage and radio plays, and Mr. Pie 1953, a relatively tightly structured novel in which God implicitly mocks the evangelical pretensions and cozy worldview of the eponymous hero. The 5 years between 1943 and 1948 were some of the most productive of his career. He finished Titus Groan and Gormenghast and completed some of his most acclaimed illustrations for books of other authors, including Lewis Carrollson's The Hunting of the Snake, Snark, and Alice in Wonderland. Samuel Taylor Coleridge's The Rime of the Ancient Mariner, The Brother Grimm's Household Tales, All This and Bevan Too by Quentin Crisp, and Robert Louis Stevenson's Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, as well as producing many original poems, drawings, and paintings.
So
A
Mervyn Peck is a very important writer. A book of nonsense poems of Mervyn Peck called Rhymes Without Reason was published in 1944 and was described by John Benjamin as outstanding. Please note these things. A book of nonsense rhymes called Rhymes Without Reason, published in 1944 by Mervyn Peck. Shortly after the war ended in 1945, Edgar Ainsworth, the art editor of Picture Post, commissioned Peck to visit France and Germany for the magazine. With writer Tom Pocock, Peck was among the first British civilians to witness the horrors of the Nazi concentration camp at Belsen, where the remaining prisoners, too sick to be moved, were dying before his very eyes. He made several drawings, but not surprisingly, he found the experience profoundly harrowing and expressed in deeply felt poems the ambiguity of turning their suffering into art. So, a very important point here is Rhymes Without Reason by Mervyn Peck, published in 1944. So, that's all for tonight from our side. I really hope you guys liked the session and enjoyed the discussion and the content we are bringing to you. Every Thursday we try to bring something new to you so that you guys can cope up with the new current updates scenario that is coming up in all the exams these days. And before we wrap up for tonight, we are closing our net class admissions on October 10. Before that, you can use our code DASERA and save extra rupees 2,000, right? And enroll for our net December course, which is going on right now. So that's all from our side for tonight. Ananya, shall we wrap up?
Yes, good night, everyone.
Yes, and please like the session and share this with your friends. I will see you again tomorrow at 9. Bye. Take care. Good night.